And we are live. Hello, everyone. This is My Two Cents, and welcome back to my channel. I do apologize for the 2-week hiatus. I had tweeted out last week that I was going to try to get 2 streams in last weekend to make up for the lack of one the week prior to that. Let's just say I had some personal matters come up that I had to deal with, which were unpleasant, but thankfully have been dealt with for now. In the meantime, I hope everyone had a happy Thanksgiving and, of course, Merry Christmas, and I hope everyone is enjoying the beginning of the holiday season. As most often, I'm joined with my co-host Night Shift 10,000. Night Shift, how you doing? Hope you enjoy your holidays.
I am doing wonderfully. Thank you for asking, and yes, I am enjoying my holidays.
Okay, wonderful. Well, before we get started, as everyone can see here, I've got an article queued up about the new Argentinian president, Javier Milei, which, as a libertarian ANCAP, to see him come to power is a small bit of hope for the world, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But before we get started here, I did want to talk quick about the Thanksgiving season, since we just got through that. Night Shifts, what'd you do for Thanksgiving? You have any particular food or family traditions that you particularly enjoy?
No, not for Thanksgiving. That usually comes around more for Christmas than anything else. But I did have a good time with my family, and we all had a good time together. So, yeah, it was good. There was good food, good times, and just everything was awesome. What about you?
Yeah. Excellent. Well, same here. Obviously, got together with family, had a lot of turkey, pecan pie, stuffing, mashed potatoes, baked corn, all that good stuff. Although I did, the one thing I say that I always look forward to most about Thanksgiving is, at least in my family, and as I've heard in most people's families, you make way more food than you actually need. And despite everyone stuffing their faces during the meal, for the next week at least, you have tons and tons of Thanksgiving-related leftovers. So the thing I always do is to help get rid of those leftovers. Like 3 meals a day, I will eat the same sandwich that I designed myself about 8 years ago. Haven't really given it a name. I guess you can call it the 2-cent sandwich. But before I'll preface this probably ain't the most healthy thing in the world, but oh boy, it's delicious. So start by taking your leftover turkey, throw it in the frying pan along with a hearty amount of butter, and recook the turkey by frying it in butter. Again, probably not the most healthy thing in the world, but it's delicious. After refrying the turkey in butter, I will take it, put it on top of bread, which I then fry in the frying pan from which the turkey just came. On top of that, put some stuffing, cheese, and then whatever else I have left over, be that mashed potatoes, baked corn, cranberry sauce sometimes. I unfortunately didn't have any of that this time around. But then cap it with another piece of bread toasted in the frying pan, and oh boy, you have a delicious Thanksgiving sandwich.
Yeah, I'll say my mouth was watering just listening to that right there.
All right, indeed. So if anyone wants to give that a try and you still got Thanksgiving leftovers, by all means, please do. And JC Armitage says, I see there was no specific title. Is there going to be a video topic? There absolutely is. I will retitle this stream when we're done. It's just when I scheduled the stream, I wasn't precisely sure what we were going to talk about. But for this stream, we're going to be talking about the recent election for the government of Argentina. I'm a little late to the party because this was mostly covered last weekend, but obviously I didn't have a stream last weekend. And that's the country of Argentina, after suffering inflation rates of like 70% for the past 10 years. I think it's something like 150% overall over the past 10 years. Their economy is in shambles. The country is falling apart. It has defaulted on its debts more times than it can count now. And in backlash to all the politicians who, like every other government, have always said, if we just print more money and give the government more power, things will be better, Argentina has finally opted to go a new direction and elected Javier Milei, a self-described libertarian and anarcho-capitalist, which, interestingly enough, I have said on my channel before, I find it very hard to believe that any nation thoroughly baptized in statism could ever elect, democratically speaking, someone who identified as an anarcho-capitalist. Well, yeah. I am happy to be proved wrong. And it just goes to show, when things go to crap as bad as they have in Argentina, maybe, just maybe, there's hope for the world, in that the people are fed up and have realized none of the statists we've elected before have done anything for us. Maybe it's time to go a different direction.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, left-leaning papers like the Washington Post don't like him very much. But to kind of, before we jump in, a brief summary. I know most people watching are familiar with the content I've put out for the last few years. But pretty much the whole point of anarcho-capitalism is the fact, as Murray Rothbard, who's sometimes called the father of anarcho-capitalism, said, the state is that entity that obtains its revenue not through peaceful, voluntary transaction, but through coercion. And if you think about it, every other interaction in the free market only occurs because both parties to the agreement are better off. If you walk into a store and purchase, an item for $20, you are effectively saying that that item is worth more to you than your $20. The store is effectively saying that the $20 is worth more to them than the item. Were this not the case, the transaction would not take place. Now, that doesn't mean that all the transactions that take place are smart. People do, in fact, make stupid decisions that come back to bite them later. But the point is, so long as no one was coerced, you only make the decisions you make because you're convinced, rightly or wrongly, that you're both better off by making the transaction. The one exception, of course, is government transactions. Because the government obtains its revenue not by providing services that people are voluntarily paying for, but by forcibly taxing the citizens, there's no way for the government to accurately calculate whether people actually want what the services it provides. I mean, sure, you can run public polls, but those are never as effective as people actually voting with their wallets and taking out their hard-earned money. As a result, the government always does things that benefit the politicians in power, not the people. And over time, the size of government inevitably grows and the amount of power and freedoms that the government takes away from the people to hoard for itself grows, simply because people are individuals. They act in their own self-interest. And when you give certain individuals the power over other individuals to take what they want by force, it's no surprise that inevitably those people decide to use their power to do what's best for them, not what's best for everyone else. So it goes to show government when you understand this basic truth, government cannot by definition make things better for the people. It can only help some people at the expense of others. And quite often it ends up hurting in the long run, everyone for the short-term benefit of politicians. Of course, that's not what the rank and file status would have you believe. It's not what the state-controlled media would have you believe. So let's take a look here at what the Washington Post author Gabriel Pasquini has to say he published this article yesterday at 6 a.m. about Argentina's new president, Javier Milei. Opinion.
I just want to add something really quickly, just to kind of answer people in the comment section. Do I believe this is going to change anything for the better? It might. It's kind of a coin flip. I do want to give President Javier a benefit of a doubt, but as I was just talking about with my 2 cents before we started, if he doesn't shut down the government, or if he doesn't start dismantling the Argentinian government within a few weeks, I'm going to be skeptical. And I mean, I hope we all remember. I actually did a video myself on, if I was made the president of the United States, these are things that I would do. But in the video, I myself said the only way that they could ever make me president is if they pointed a gun to my head and say, you're going to be the president, or we're going to kill you now, or we're going to throw you in the most horrible federal prison we have. And the only thing that would be stopping me personally from actually dismantling the U.S. government, the Fed, the central banks, would literally be, again, if the scenario in the video was also, if it was like the scenario in the video, and it was also, you can make the government as large as small or as small as you want, but you cannot dismantle it. So, I mean, personally, that's what I would do if I was, if I was forced to be president of any country. My first mission would be dismantle the government, dismantle the Fed, dismantle the central banking establishment, but only if I could. So, yeah, I mean, I want to give him the benefit of a doubt, but ultimately, if he doesn't start doing that, then I'm going to be doubtful.
Okay. And I would say I will be as fair to Javier Milei as possible, and that is that it is impossible to undo decades of status indoctrination in just a matter of a few weeks. I would wager things in Argentina are going to get worse before they get better, simply because there are many people there that are addicted to government programs and government handouts, and that's going to be very difficult to stave off. But if one of his campaign promises was he will completely dismantle the Argentina central bank, get rid of it wholesale. And if he does, that is the best thing he could possibly do for curing their inflation problem. Right. Now, I'm going to put this out there. Javier Milei did not kill himself. And I say that only because central bankers historically do not take kindly to politicians who want to do away with them. So I wish Javier Milei the best, but I'm just going to say for the record, a couple weeks in advance, if a couple weeks from now it's suddenly reported that Javier Milei committed suicide, do not believe it. You can bet for sure who was behind that.
Well, in all honesty, I think Javier Milei ought to say something to that effect, like, when I do this, when I start to dismantle the Central Bank of Argentina, I am not suicidal. I do not want to self-harm. If it is reported that I committed suicide, it is not true. He should do that. He actually should do that, in my opinion. So,
yes.
But yeah, please continue.
I hope he does. I really hope he does.
Right.
Well, let's go. Let's see what Gabriel Pasquini has to say here about Argentina's firebrand new president-elect is pushing a disastrous old agenda. Now, agenda, in that last I checked, if somebody can please point to me to any politician elected through a democratic government in the past 100 years that identified as an anarcho-capitalist, please point me to him. So this is not an old agenda. Now, is it old in the ideology? Sure. Human beings have been interacting voluntarily for hundreds of thousands of years. So the concept of anarcho-capitalism is not old. Is old. The problem is because certain people are greedy and want to have power over others, statism always seems to rear its ugly head. But no, just strictly speaking, no, this is not an old agenda. This is actually a fresh new agenda, at least in the West.
Right.
All right, so the election of Javier Milei, a far-right outsider and self-described anarcho-capitalist, as the next president of Argentina on November 19th, has left his supporters ecstatic. Those fearing his authoritarian leanings depressed. Okay, that's a contradiction in terms. Anarcho-capitalism is by definition not authoritarian. It is the lack of government and allowing people to interact voluntarily. Confession by projection, Mr. Gabriel Pasquini. It is you, as a statist, who have authoritarian leanings, but I digress. Really? And columnists such as me trying to guess how likely it is that his radical proposals, including abolishing the national central bank and currency, will succeed. Again, great. As of right now, the peso is essentially worthless. The Argentinian government has had to print money nonstop to fund its own programs. They've defaulted, I don't remember exactly how many times, but quite a few times at this point. And they have plenty of outstanding loans from the International Monetary Fund. So the central bank printing money has not been working for them any more than it's been working in the U.S. It's just Argentina is far more... where Argentina is as far as inflation now, that is what you can expect in the U.S. if we going down the same path. All right, pundits have pointed out the obvious. With no real party, legislative majority, or administrative experience, Milei will be forced to compromise to get anything done. But it's mainly precedent, not pragmatism, that threatens his success. His program has been tried at least twice before with terrible costs for Argentina. To prevail this time, Milei will have to defeat history itself. Well, by your own admission, they still have a central bank, so no, it has not been tried. It could be true that, and Grant, I'm going to say, I'll preface this, I am not an expert of Argentinian history by any means, so if I do get anything wrong here, historically speaking, by all means, feel free to correct me. What we're discussing mainly is the political and economic philosophy behind Milei, not the specific history of the state of Argentina. All right.
I've never heard of Argentina trying to get rid of their central bank before, so I take it that this columnist is lying.
All right. Clairvoyance is by definition a hard, if not impossible task. In the case of a Milei presidency, it's even harder. For long stretches of his political campaign, Milei was prone to violent outbursts and didn't shy from extreme libertarian proposals, such as legalizing free markets in human organs or firearms. And now I will say he was pretty entertaining. I'm sure everyone's seen the memes of him starting a chainsaw and saying, we're going to chainsaw the government. And that was basically his motto. Is we're going to cut off all. And there's the one video of him, like he's on a whiteboard and he has the list of all these government departments he's going to cut. It's like it's like Ministry of Tourism, cut. Ministry of Sports, cut. And, you know, like all these government departments, that's like, why on earth do you need a government department for that?
Exactly.
But that's exactly the point. People left to their own devices have wants and needs that they will seek to meet. That's what the free market is all about. So long as there's demand for something, people who want to make money will seek to meet that demand. As a result, when people are allowed to voluntarily interact and seek to meet their own wants and needs, products and services that people want and need start to appear. That's the nature of voluntary interaction. Legalizing free markets in organs or firearms, why not? And I don't want to get off on too far of a tangent, but there in so many countries around the world, organ donation, it is illegal to try and sell your organ. And because it exploits poor people. You know, you want poor people trying to sell their kidneys because they don't have anything else. And, you know, they try to think of the children, yada, 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 all these bland emotional appeals. The country isn't, and Shane Killian has touched on this in his video about universal health care. The nation of Iran is not really a bastion of freedom. It is, however, one of the few nations in the world where you are allowed to sell your organ for money. And strangely enough, organ donor lists, there is no wait for organ donor lists in Iran.
Oh, imagine that.
Imagine that. Now, when it comes to organ donations, I mean, when a family member dies, it's always a tragic time. But especially if you had the ability to sell your loved one's organs, it might be able to help you pay for funeral costs, help out what was already a bad situation, and more so when you have actual supply and demand, the likelihood that people in need of organs, you know, children who need transplants and are going to die otherwise, are much more likely to be able to get them when there is an actual supply and demand mechanism for distributing them. Right now, where the state controls who gets what organs, whether they can be harvested, when they can be harvested, things like that. We have thousands of people who die every year because they're on waiting lists and not able to get them. So for all the people who say it's so exploitive to tell you can allow you to sell body organs, if you were allowed to sell it, families who had loved ones who have just perished might be able to not suffer as hard economic hardship, and people who actually are in need saving organ transplants might be able to get them easier. And I hate to have to appeal to a country like Iran to prove that, but it does go to show that in the country where you are allowed to sell your organs, there are no organ waiting lists.
There you go.
As for firearms, an armed society is a polite society. We've talked about that plenty on this channel, so I don't need to go off on that tangent right now.
Oh, no, exactly. Totally agree.
All right. For many, Argentina is as confounding as its president-elect. Foreign visitors find it inexplicable that a country rich in natural and human resources would suffer cyclical crises. Yes, it does make sense. But you know what other countries are like this? Venezuela and Brazil and a lot of South American countries that are, in fact, rich resources and have a year-round growing season, and by all accounts should be incredibly rich, are doing extremely poor. What's the one thing they all have in common? Totalitarian socialist governments.
Yep.
This shouldn't be hard to put together, but says, how could a country this rich be doing so poorly? Does it have a totalitarian socialist government? Yes. Well, there's your answer. Yet, of course, the Bernie Sanders of the world will never accept that. It's just always wasn't real socialism, yada, yada. And we get the same story over and over. Attempting to solve this puzzle, many observers in the international press blame populism. Now, incidentally, I've never really liked the term populism, which I think strictly populism refers to a political policy of trying to appeal to the common man, which, of course, in any system that has some level of democratic elections, any politician is going to have to appeal to the common man.
Right.
I would say Milei's election is a reflection so much of populism as it is a reflection of the fact that the same politicians trying the same things for decades has not worked. I don't believe someone like Milei could get elected in the United States right now, but the reason is the United States is not as far gone as Argentina. The fact that someone like Milei got elected goes to show if inflation gets bad enough, if the economy takes a hard enough downturn, and if the government fails to deliver on its promises time and time again for long enough, sometimes a hard in the head will eventually get people to try something new. And the only populism in play here is the fact that Milei was able to get elected by offering the people something they hadn't already been offered ad nauseum.
Right.
All right. So experts at the International Monetary Fund, to which Argentina owes $31 billion. Of course, that's due to their own spending policies, so they have no one to blame but for themselves. But stick to arithmetic. The country spends more than they have, they thunder, and its cardinal sin is to recklessly ride the fluctuations of international commodity markets, thoughtlessly enjoying the upswings, but never saving or preparing for downturns. Well, yes, that is what we say. And incidentally, if you study the economic history of any country, to include the United States, you can see that that's exactly what happens. And then, of course, journalists like this Gabriel fellow decide they need to explain it away. Well, if that's not really what's happening, why is what we're predicting happening over and over again?
Right.
But continuing, most Argentines have adapted to this roller coaster by embracing a widespread fatalism. Everything will eventually go to hell. It's all fatalism, punctuated by brief periods of what turns out to be deceptive hope. And yes, when politicians keep promising we're going to solve inflation and inflation gets higher, you shouldn't be surprised that people start to realize, hey, the government's full of crap, and start preparing for the worst. And incidentally, you should be preparing for the worst, because despite what the government has told you, so long as they intend to continue using a central bank, so long as they plan to continue increasing government spending and expanding the size and scope of the government itself, yes, everything is going to go to hell eventually. 100% of governments that have been tried historically end up failing in this manner. Do you really think that the current government is going to be any different? All right, is Milei one such pipe dream? Like almost every other Argentine president, he is promising he's different, that he will be the decisive turn in national history. In his version of this history, Argentina was the richest country in the world at the end of the 19th century, only to be knocked down by interventionist policies. The state has been the problem. Free markets is the solution. And I hate to sound like a broken record, but yes, that's the answer.
That is absolutely the answer.
I challenge this author to point me to just one example in history where a Western government actually followed through on any promises of deregulation and shrinking the size of government. There's an article I have on my blog about this, which is instantly made into a video on my channel as well, called "Why Government Elections Are a Farce." And you can examine history. The government of the United States as a prototype, but every other Western government follows the same pattern. And that is, despite promises politicians make, over time, the state increases the amount that it taxes from the people. It grows its spending increases, and it grows in the size and scope of its authority, despite whatever lip service politicians may pay to shrinking government. And any policy that has ever been blamed on capitalism, if you examine, always occurs in light of government intervention.
Yep.
I stand by that 100%. I challenge anyone to provide just one example where that's not the case.
Right.
As much as Milei likes to think otherwise, the last Argentine military dictatorship came to power with the slogan, "Downsizing the state is making the nation bigger." Its minister of the economy, Jose Alfredo Martinez de Hoz, was a pre-Thatcher, I'm going to guess that means Margaret Thatcher, neoliberal who tried to deregulate the economy only for it to end up in disaster. All right. Now, I am not an expert on Argentine history. I will have to go ahead and do some reading on that to find out exactly what happened there. What I can say is that military dictatorship and anarcho-capitalism are not compatible governments. So whatever this government was, if it was a military dictatorship, it was by definition not an ANCAP society. And he doesn't talk anywhere here about what exactly Martinez de Hoz did to try and shrink the government. I can't really that without knowing the specifics.
Right.
In the 1990s, President Carlos Menem tried the same using a different political formula. He forced his own movement, Peronism, to embrace its historical nemesis, neoliberalism. His longest-serving minister of the economy, Domingo Cavallo, deregulated the economy while pegging the Argentine peso to the US dollar to tame inflation. These policies resulted in the dramatic crisis of 2001 to 2002, with private savings frozen, the peso devalued, and more than half the country living under the poverty line. Well, again, the central bank still exists. So as far as pegging the peso to the US dollar to tame inflation, I would like to know, did the central bank, did he actually slash spending? Did he close down government departments? Did he stop printing money? If the answer to any of those questions is no, then it's no surprise that it didn't actually work.
Exactly.
Even if they ended in total failure, those experiments bore short-term success. Okay, they bore short-term success. Menem was even reelected. He just bequeathed the problems to the next administration, which eventually crumbled under the burden. Now, I think this is an important point here. Give me just a minute. But another inherent problem and with democratically elected Republican government, and Hans Hermann Hoppe has touched on this in his book, Democracy, the God That Failed. But when you have politicians that know they will only be in office for 4, 8 years, or however many years, they have a direct incentive to milk the system for their own benefit as hard as they can while they're in office, knowing that whatever problems they have will be passed on to someone else who will then get blamed later on. So part of the problem with the current Democratic Republican forms of government that are exalted in the West is that despite whatever promises politicians do make, they're only in office for a certain amount of time. Of course, like all other people, they inevitably end up using their own benefit, not the benefit of others. And it's not surprising that many do not follow through on promises, or that policies that may have been working while they were in office get reversed by the next guy who comes in, which makes the possibility for long-term change and long-term policy very difficult. Now, that's not to say necessarily that means that any other form of government is better. It just is an inherent weakness to the Democratic and Republican form of government. All right, both Menem and Martinez de Hoz had two key resources in their favor: strong political backing and access to necessary funding. Martinez de Hoz had a military dictatorship behind him and took on massive debt from international banks to keep his policies afloat, in the end to no avail. Menem, meanwhile, was leading the most popular political force in the history of the country. His minister Cavallo financed his neoliberal policies with massive external debt, as Martinez de Hoz did, to which he added the selling off of state-owned companies. The impossibility of paying those external debts decisively contributed to the fall of the military regime in the first case and led to Argentina's 2001 default in the other. Well, again here, this whole paragraph, though, speaks to the same problem. The government is still trying to fix things through government policies and government funding. That's what it means to say that he couldn't fund his own policies and had to take on debt, means he was still trying to use the power of government to fix the problem. As Milei has pointed out, more government spending isn't going to fix this. The only way we fix this is by cutting government spending. And by this own admission in this paragraph, government spending did not get cut. These government regimes, whatever they did, had to spend even more to try and undertake their policies. So you're undercutting your own argument, but by all means, please go ahead.
Right.
All right. Milei's solution for the crisis, as far as he has revealed, is some version of neoliberal shock therapy with deregulation and draconian cuts to public spending. As noted, this has all been done before. No, it hasn't. Not if what you said was true, that the problem they ran into was inability to fund. You just got done saying the problems with the previous administrations was they failed to fund their own programs and took on too much debt. And now you're saying deregulation and cutting spending is not the problem? Gee. Yeah, the cognitive dissonance. I don't know what to say.
Talk about talking out of the other side of your face. God damn.
Milei admires the Menem Cavallo administration above all others, but he can't ask for international loans to finance those reforms. Argentina is still barely making payments to the IMF, and no bank will lend the country $1. So Milei, like Menem Cavallo, wants to sell off the few state-owned companies still standing. This, however, will take time that the crisis might not give him. You know, honestly, it's going to be extremely difficult for him to do this. I know, despite the fact that he's a president, that doesn't mean he has absolute power over the government. I'm sure there will be people that will push back. But I honestly feel like the best thing he could do for himself for his first few weeks in office is completely shut down the government, send all the workers, all government employees home without pay, and wait until the economy finds price levels that account for the current amount of currency, or until the markets transition away from the peso and start using cryptocurrency or the US dollar or some other form of currency, see what the market selects as money, and then go from there. Now, I don't think that's actually going to happen. I doubt that he has by himself the power to do something like that. But that really would be what it would take to see what a hard stop to government spending could actually do for an economy.
Right.
And Milei is politically far weaker. Yes, like those two predecessors, he has come to power in the wake of a terrible economic crisis with high inflation and soaring poverty. But he lacks the political strength that helped them overcome social resistance. His coalition, La Libertad Avanza, Freedom Advances, obtained just 30% of the national vote in the first round of the presidential election. Milei reached 56% in the runoff, but the voters behind those additional 26 points were rejecting the alternative, not necessarily choosing him. Well, of course, that is kind of, again, the natural fallout of Democratic elections, but at least the fact that they're rejecting the alternative shows everyone's sick of what they've tried up to this point and want to try something new. Polls have consistently shown that many of his voters don't share his views or believe in his proposals. It's no wonder he's already made a veiled threat to respond to protests with violence. Okay, I'm not going to follow that link, but I'm just going to say this comes from the same newspaper that accused Donald Trump of insurrection for January 6th. I'm not going to put too much credence in whatever they're saying he said that said he was going to respond to protests with violence. In the National Congress, he will be able to count on fewer than 40 LLA lower chamber seats out of 257 and 7 senators out of 72. Partisan lines aside, provincial governors usually play a crucial role in parliamentary negotiations by offering the votes of their representatives in exchange for federal subsidies or public works benefiting their districts. Milei's coalition has no governors, and he has repeatedly said he wants to eliminate those handouts and stop all public works. That said, Milei is more than capable of compromise, no matter the madman persona he adopted during the campaign. He has been shrewd enough to outmaneuver the two main political forces in the country with almost no party infrastructure and scant resources. When the governing center left Peronism financed him to divide the opposition, Milei had no qualms about using that support to elbow out his competitors in the conservative Juntos por el Cambio coalition. And when they defeated JXC leaders he had vilified, offered their allegiance in their runoff. Milei embraced them to secure victory, even retreating on some of the more unpopular proposals, including eliminating public education and health insurance. Equipped with little more than his cunning, Milei will try again to apply a program that has failed twice before. Again, by your own admission, no, it hasn't. But in a country that does not shy away from toppling presidents for not delivering, I wonder if both the new president and the old program can survive together, or if one of them will have to go.
All right. Wow.
Yeah. All I can say to that is, again, you're claiming this has been tried before, but then you go on to say that the problem in both cases where it was tried before is that the government ran out of money and defaulted on its debts. That goes to show, again, the problem at the core is too much government spending. Now, I really hope, I wish Milei the best. As they mentioned, he is the president, but that doesn't mean that under their form of government, he is a dictator and can do whatever he wants. He can't. I imagine there is going to be very strong pushback to his efforts to try and close the central bank and slash spending. That being said, if he can do anything to cut the Argentinian spending budget, at least some, can't make the situation any worse. So, exactly. So I do wish him the best. And as you mentioned, I do think he should make a public statement here soon saying, I am not suicidal. I have no intention of killing myself. And if you hear in the next couple of weeks that I am dead and I committed suicide, you can assure that that is not the case.
Javier Milei didn't kill himself.
Indeed. Indeed, he did not. And I do like what Mr. Merchant said here. Anytime I hear people talk about the word neoliberal in a negative context, all I think they are saying is anyone with more libertarian, less authoritarian than me. And yeah, that really is it, because papers like the Washington Post, most mainstream media, and most people living in the West, unfortunately, have been fed a steady diet of state indoctrination, public schools, and have come to believe so strongly that government is our savior and we can't do anything without government, that to suggest otherwise, it's just, to them, it's they can't fathom that would be the case. It's like a child who is for the first time gets told Santa Claus isn't real. They want so badly to believe it's not the case that they just turn away and can't process it.
Right. Oh, good Lord.
I also like what J.C. Armitage has had to say here. Kind of like how Africa is a resource-heavy continent, yet there's Stalinist dictatorships all throughout that continent. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Same goes with South America, but Venezuela, Argentina, and Africa, there are all these places in the world that are rich in natural resources, have a year-round growing season, good weather for growing crops that the world desperately needs, and yet they're all exceedingly poor. The common denominator, Stalinist dictatorships, socialist governments, totalitarian regimes. It's been tried time and time again. What almost no one is trying is libertarianism, at least not until Argentina elected Milei. So I wish them the best, and I hope he proves a prototype for things to change in the West. I'm not hopeful for someone like him coming to power in the United States, but then again, 5 years ago, I wouldn't have been hopeful for Argentina either. So you never know.
Well, and who knows? Maybe he'll be a trendsetter. Maybe people will see success in Argentina. They'll see him succeed in Argentina. And who knows? Maybe South American nations will adopt the same thing, and it'll start spreading. So, hell, you never know. It might even start spreading to North America, and we might, in maybe about 10, 15 years, maybe we will see a libertarian or anarcho-capitalist president here. You never know.
Never know. I would love to see Ron Paul have a successor to kind of take that mantle. He came closer than anyone else ever has.
Exactly. Yeah. We missed something great there.
Indeed, we certainly did. We certainly did. Instead, we got Joe Biden.
Oh, God. Ugh.
I'm not to go on this tangent, but I can't resist. So I don't watch a lot of news, but every now and then, especially I travel a lot for my job. So when it's late and I've gotten back to my hotel, I'll often go down to the bar for the evening, and they usually have some news playing. When I was traveling for business, when Joe Biden gave his last speech after he had just met with President Xi from China, the trip that famously showed that San Francisco can fix its homeless and trash problems, but only when China visits, because San Francisco's overrun with homeless people, crap all over the streets, and not unclean. But then the Chinese president visits, and suddenly they manage to find places for the homeless people, clean up the streets, yada yada.
Yeah.
So Joe Biden comes out to give a speech after he's just met with President Xi and intends to talk about how great everything is. I'm about 4 beers in at this point, so I'm definitely ready to listen to what he has to say. But oh gosh, what was the speech is Biden had like 6 cue cards in his hand. And as he's giving his speech, you can see him directly reading off these giant cue cards. So obviously his eyesight's not so great because they have to make him that big. And then finally, when he gets to questions, he doesn't even try to hide it. He's like, all right, let's get to questions. And he pauses and looks down at his note card and then realizes he's got the wrong one, pulls another one out. He's like, our first question is from reporter so-and-so at the Washington Post I don't think it was the Washington Post, one of those major news outlets. So not only can the president not give his own speeches, he has to read them off cue cards. It's clear from that all questions he's being asked are pre-planned beforehand. He has on his cue card who's going to ask him a question and what question he's going to be asked, lest he say something even stupider than he otherwise would.
Yeah, I'm surprised they don't have to like wheel him in and like in like a crate carrier or something like that, just to hold him up and whatnot, just tied to a crate carrier. Just to hold him up, just to get him to the podium and then to get him off to the old folks home or whatever. But what were you going to say?
Vivek Ramaswamy said it right in the last Republican national debate. The Democratic Party needs to admit that Joe Biden is not the president of the United States. He is an old, doddering fool who has no idea where he is, much less what is going on in the country. Right. They need to just admit it, pull him off the stage, and whoever's actually making the decisions, go ahead and make a run for it this time. I mean, sadly, I wouldn't be surprised if someone like Hunter Biden is making the decisions for his dad at this point. I think it came out that he's sleeping on a cot next to his father at the White House now, because the president may not even be competent enough to get out of bed in the middle of the evening.
Yeah, no, they found some of they found either some of Hunter Biden's or some of Obama's cocaine in the White House just recently or something like that.
But yeah, they found cocaine in the White House, and after investigating, the Secret Service just came out and said, we have no idea where this came from.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there's pictures of Hunter Biden all over the internet doing cocaine off of hookers' butts, but we don't have any idea where this cocaine came from.
Yeah, exactly.
JC Armitage, America can be described in one word. Creepy Uncle Joe Biden.
Creepy Uncle Joe.
Nice. Exactly.
Nice.
And I will say this, as much as many problems as I have with Donald Trump as well, if Donald Trump ends up running against Joe Biden again and wins, that will be The amount of public backlash will be very hilarious to watch.
Oh, it will be, honestly. Although I do want to make a suggestion. I don't know if anyone knows about this, and I know this isn't actually Obama, Trump, and Biden playing against each other. I know it's like AIs, but like there's like this really funny there's this really funny channel, and it's President's Play or something like that. It's where like Obama, Trump, and Biden play games. They play computer games either with each other or against each other, and it is hilarious because they do they do like AI for all the presidents, and they again Biden's in it, and it is the only place you are actually going to hear Biden beat any just legible at all. It's the only place you're ever going to hear him be like at all sensible, at all legible. And but it's a really funny channel. I would definitely suggest the videos, especially
I'm pretty sure I've seen the one where they play Pokemon Emerald together.
Yeah, no, they did that. I just got through the one where they played the game Demonologist or Demonology or something like that. It was about you play like you play as like demon hunters, and they were actually playing it, and it's actually a really freaky game. And I don't know how they did it, but it was just hilarious just watching them go through that. Just as AI programs, just watching them go through that was hilarious. So I would definitely suggest that.
Absolutely. Well, at this point, we're about 40 minutes in. I usually do let these shows go for an hour, but we have covered the main topic. So I think I'd be willing to cut the stream a little shorter than normal. However, I will put out, for anyone watching right now, if there is anything you'd like to hear myself and Night Shift's thoughts on, by all means, put them in the chat. Well, I'll leave it open topic until we come to an end with the stream. And I will say this. If anyone has any, whether it's like video responses, articles, anything you'd like to see me cover on the show coming up, I'm a little sparse for ideas. I don't want to keep covering the same topics over and over again, although they keep coming up. So if anyone has any ideas, by all means, shoot them my way, and we can get some planned shows for the coming weeks.
Okay.
Jonathan O here says, what are your thoughts on the phrase, if you can't afford to pay your workers a living wage, you shouldn't be in business? Okay, this phrase comes up quite a bit, especially, I think it was Robert Reich, Bill Clinton's Secretary of why is the name escaping me at the minute? One of Bill Clinton's cabinet members, Robert Reich, said this. And when you say that, what you are effectively saying is that your workers would be better off being unemployed, making no money, than employed, making some money at your business. Because how it goes is, what really this comes down to is, in the marketplace, there are some businesses like Walmart and Amazon and these other giant corporations that have very large profit margins that as such can afford to pay their workers a little bit more. Businesses that are just getting started, small businesses in particular, until they can get on their feet, they have to actually start making sales and growing profit margins before they can even think about paying more on their workers. As a result, when the government passes laws like minimum wage that say by law you must pay your workers this much money, it makes it increasingly difficult for small businesses and new businesses to compete with these larger often state subsidized corporations. As a result, there's less competition and things are more expensive. So you're by saying this, if you can't afford to pay your workers a living wage, you shouldn't be in business. You are effectively saying your workers would be better off having no jobs at all than working for you for that wage. Because let's face it, your workers, in a completely voluntary system, your workers would not be working for you unless they had voluntarily agreed to work for that wage. If you're saying that you need to pay your workers more or we're shutting down your business, you're effectively saying that your workers are better off being unemployed, making no money, than making money for you voluntarily. It's just, it's as simple as that. And all you're doing is guaranteeing that there will be less competition in the market and that these giant these same politicians like Robert Reich who rag on these giant corporations, the policies they push ensure that those corporations are bigger and have fewer competitors. So it just goes to show that they're either completely economically illiterate or they're lying for their own purposes. And I'm far more inclined to think the latter.
Exactly.
Jonathan O says, what are your thoughts on drunk driving? Same as my thought on drunk anything else. If you choose to drink, you are responsible for anything you do while drunk. Therefore, if you drive drunk and you cause an accident or you kill someone, you are wholly responsible for that, just as if you were sober.
Exactly.
Mr. Merchant says, I have some ideas. Am I allowed to join? And where can I send you response materials? My 2 cents. Best message me on Twitter or send a tweet to me would be the best way. Otherwise, you can send it to my email. As far as joining the stream, generally that's limited to my patrons. So if you're interested in becoming a patron, you can check out my Patreon page, which I don't have a link to on this stream, although I do have my PayPal tip jar. So if you would rather just send me a one-time tip, we could discuss that for if you wanted to be on a stream as well. I will also put my email in the stream here just for either message me on Twitter or send me an email, and I'll put my email in the chat here just a second.
Is Mr. Merchant not a patron?
Unless he goes by another name that I'm not aware of.
Oh, okay.
And then my Twitter handle here, I'll give everyone. There are some other people on Twitter called My 2 Cents, so I'll just make sure everyone has my correct X handle. No longer Twitter. Man, I am never going to be able to get used to that.
Do you ever go on Discord anymore?
Not really.
Not really.
Okay, I guess I really should get back on there. I had a Discord server for a while. I guess it's one of those platforms that it's so hard to keep up with every platform, and I just kind of fell off that one.
No. Your Discord server is still up. I'm on there, so.
Okay. Well, if people are still using it, good for them. But do I think labor unions are good or bad for the economy? What it really comes down to is consent. I think if private unions form voluntarily and people choose to join voluntarily, then yes, because people would not choose to join unless they were convinced that it was in their best interest to do so. It's public sector unions that by law you are required to join the union that are causing problems for the economy.
And they are crooked as hell too. The public unions, they are just absolutely crooked as hell. Pretty much all of them are too. I have yet to find an actual public sector union that is not corrupt in some way or another. And I mean, it's funny. The Simpsons actually made a joke about that once in one of the episodes about unions, and literally they made a joke about it was like Mr. Burns was like, where is that representative from the union? He's over 20 minutes late. And Smithers was like, I don't know, sir. He hasn't showed up ever since he promised to clean up the union. And then it cuts to a football field where a football player is running, and then he trips over a body-shaped hole. And he's like, what the hell? And it's supposed to insinuate that that's the member, is like they basically killed him. And they even make a really dark joke later on in the episode about the union representative. And so I know that there are public sector unions that have literally gone as far as murdering people to basically stay crooked. And so, yeah, public sector unions, they are terrible as well. What was I going to make a point on? There was something else. I can't think of it right now, but they're also really terrible too. And I'll mention it in the future if I think about it.
Okay, there are 2 public sector unions I will call out as being particularly terrible: teachers unions and police officers unions.
Yeah,
it is a proven fact that teachers unions have defended teachers that have been proven to have molested students. Teachers unions defended them in court and ended up moving towards requiring the state to hire them back. Also, police officer unions, officers that have been found guilty of misconduct, abusing individuals. Most recently, the Parkland Sheriff's deputy, the one who failed to do his job, the active shooter at Broward County, the Parkland shooter, forget the guy's name, but the sheriff's deputy who was assigned to that school, his whole job was to protect those kids. And when the time came, there was an active shooter. He just stood outside and did nothing. He was fired by the department and the union who defended him in court. The department was required to hire him back and pay him 2 years' salary for the time he missed not working.
Oh, wow. No, and actually, no, it gets even worse than that with the police unions. And I would encourage anyone to do this. Look up Los Angeles Police Department gangs. They literally, the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department literally has gangs. They're police gangs. And Oh, wow. That's the worst.
Okay. And Mr. Merchant, I'll just say, I
Yeah.
hope you didn't construe that as me saying, go become a patron or donate to me right now. This goes to you. This goes to everyone else. You do not owe me anything. I do this because I enjoy it. Now, granted, I can't allow everybody if I allowed everyone who wanted to come on my show to come on, that'd be a lot of people I'd be having to accommodate. So I do have to have some kind of discriminating factor. Right now, I limit that to those that are patrons of the show. But obviously, just because that's a perk of supporting my channel does not mean I'm telling you you should. If you don't have the money or you feel you have better things to do with your money, you owe me nothing. Do not. I hope it didn't come across as me trying to sound like you did. So,
Okay.
What are my thoughts on climate change? I do like the way Bill O'Reilly said it. Only God can control the climate. That's my thought on climate change. I mean, I think this is kind of a worthless discussion. Do I believe that the climate is changing? Of course it is. The Earth has been around for at least 4 billion years, and historically speaking, we can show that the climate has changed a lot over those 4 billion years. Is it possible that man-made emissions are affecting that? Yes, but I seriously doubt, even if it is, there's nothing like what real solutions are you proposing? The whole people who get all up in arms about climate change and how we need to lower our carbon emissions, they're not saying that out of genuine belief. What the people really want is to eliminate privately owned vehicles and bring about a system of public transportation so that they can track the movements of people everywhere they go. That's what that's really about. And of course, and the fact that people like Al Gore are flying around the world on private jets that emit far more than even the most gas heavy Hummers proves that they don't really believe what they're saying.
Exactly. And in my own personal opinion, if we are causing, if there is human-made climate change, I would say research private sector solutions to that. Research private sector solutions, private sector research and development on those. Because I even mentioned, I was in a debate with someone, and you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong about this, but I actually mentioned this to someone. And a few years ago, I actually saw something where scientists, of course, in the private sector itself, had discovered a way to turn excess carbon dioxide and carbon particles into energy, and that they'd actually figured out how to turn carbon dioxide into energy, and that they could take excess carbon from the air, from the ground, from the water, and it could be atomized into energy. And so that would definitely be a great solution if we are causing climate change, would be to endorse private sector solutions like that, where they actually want to turn it into energy, where they want to turn it into something that is going to help us in the long run. And I'm all for that if they have it. But yeah, I mean that's what I would say is my own personal solution on it.
Yeah, and on that, I would say, when it's interesting that people who actually try to come up with solutions get virtually no media coverage. Instead, people like Greta Thunberg, who has never worked a real job in her life, is totally stumped when asked what she actually wants governments to do. People like her get all the media coverage, not people who are actually proposing solutions.
Yeah.
And on another tangent, it seems she's now endorsed Hamas. So real bright intellect there.
Of course.
She's all against climate change, but she's out endorsing actual terrorist groups. Good for her. Thoughts on the World Economic Forum? To answer that question, look up Milton Friedman's take on the World Economic Forum. I would just encourage you on that. Milton Friedman, World Economic Forum, see what he had to say about it. Mr. Merchant says, paraphrased, of course, tax you into poverty because the sun is hot. The one thing I agree with Andrew Tate on when it comes to climate change.
Yep.
If that was an Andrew Tate quote, then good for him. Can't say I respect him as an individual, but even a broken clock is right twice a day.
Yeah.
Now that being said, Andrew Tate says many true, much like Pearl. Andrew Tate says many true things. Even if I think he's generally a sleazy individual, he does say many true things. So. Do you agree? Jonathan O asks, do you agree not everything the government spends money on is a waste of money? Public funding of science brought about the internet, space exploration, and satellites. I would say not. It depends on how you define waste. Is it true that government programs have produced useful inventions? Yes. It's equally true that had it been left to the private sector, it would have been done. It still would have been accomplished and more efficiently. I mean,
sooner more than likely.
Exactly. Look at the amount of money NASA spends compared to an organization like Elon Musk's SpaceX. It just goes to show we do not need government in order to advance, to make scientific advancements. In fact, I believe Thomas DiLorenzo has written a piece on this at the Mises Institute, comparing the so-called inventions of public compared to private sector innovations. The reality is they're not even close. You know what? Actually, while we're here, let me see if I can find that link and I will send it to the chat.
Okay.
You know what? Actually, this isn't the one I was thinking of, but what immediately comes up is an article written by Murray Rothbard on the subject. And of course, he is considered the father of anarcho-capitalism. So I will go ahead and put that link in the chat.
Oh, nice.
All right. Well, on that note, we're just about to reach the hour. So I'm going to go ahead and call the stream there. Night Shift, thank you for joining me. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Again, best of luck to Javier Milei. And I encourage him to make a public statement right now saying he is not suicidal and has no intention of killing himself. Hope everyone enjoyed their Thanksgiving holiday. And of course, it's the beginning of the Christmas season. So I wish everyone goodwill, cheer, and all that other good stuff. Listen to lots of Christmas music. I know I already have been. No, I just got done putting up my Christmas tree. Night Shift, you done the same?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, awesome. I do love the holidays, of course. With that, it means I can't guarantee how many streams are going to take place over the next few weeks. I do have a lot going on, both with family and my job, but I will sprinkle things here and there. And as I said, if anybody has any things they want me to cover, please message me on Twitter or email, both of which can be found on my YouTube channel. And as always, that is my 2 cents. Take it for what it's worth.